All right, let's try a little thought experiment. And it's one that probably hits pretty close to home for anyone who drives a car. We're going to explore what would happen to the auto industry and to your wallet if we made one simple, okay, one massive change to the world.
So, what if you woke up tomorrow and the price of oil didn't just go up a little? What if it quadrupled overnight? I know, it sounds like something out of a movie, right? But stick with me, because diving into this question actually shows us the hidden economic triggers that could totally reshape our entire world.
Okay, so the first place we'd all feel a shock like this, I mean, the most obvious place, is right at the pump. It would hit our wallets hard. So, what would that actually look like on the ground? Well, the connection here is painfully direct. Right now, with oil around 75 bucks a barrel, we're all pretty used to seeing gas prices in the $3 to $4 range. But you jump that oil price up to $400 a barrel, now you're looking at, get this, $14 to $18 per gallon. That's not just a price hike, that fundamentally changes the math of everyday life. And to put that into perspective, we're not talking about a bad summer for gas prices here. No way. This would be a full-on economic earthquake. It would make the big oil crises of the 1970s, the ones that completely rewrote the rules for the auto industry, look small by comparison. And history has shown us that the energy market can throw these kinds of curveballs. Those shocks back in 73 and 79, they literally forced car makers to pivot away from the big gas guzzlers. A $400 oil scenario, well, it's the exact same dynamic, just cranked up to 11. So this is where things get really interesting, because when a price shock is this extreme, things like brand loyalty or how much you love the sound of an engine, they kind of go out the window. Suddenly, the choice of what car to buy isn't about emotion anymore. It's just simple, cold, hard math. Okay, let's run the numbers. Let's say you're an average driver doing about 12,000 miles a year. If gas hits just 10 bucks a gallon, and remember, that's less than our worst case scenario, you're looking at an annual fuel bill of almost $5,000, $4,800. Now, in that exact same world, charging an electric vehicle to go the same distance, it'd be somewhere around 500 bucks. And when you see it laid out like this, I mean, that's the economic reality right there. That huge gap between those two bars, that's everything. It's not even a debate at that point. It's a total landslide. For almost everyone, the choice becomes crystal clear. So it all boils down to this one single number, $4,300. That's how much you could potentially save every single year just on fuel. I mean, think about what that is. That's a mortgage payment for some people. It's a family vacation. It's a huge boost to your retirement savings, all just from changing how your car gets its energy. Now, when you have a financial incentive that powerful, it doesn't just convince a few people to switch. It's more like an earthquake. It sets off this massive domino effect that just completely reshuffles the entire car market right from the ground up. And you can kind of see how it would play out in stages, right? First, the really inefficient gas cars, they'd become basically unsellable. Then you'd probably see a huge boom in hybrids, as a safe middle ground option. But eventually, that pure economic advantage of a full EV would be too strong to ignore, and they'd become the new normal. And gasoline cars, they'd get pushed to the fringes for very specific things, like heavy-duty trucks or off-roading. But hold on, this doesn't mean gas cars would just vanish completely, go the way of the dinosaur. Extinction isn't really the right word here. It's more that their whole purpose, their role in our world, would just fundamentally change. And let's be real, a total overnight EV takeover just isn't possible anyway. There's some huge real-world hurdles to clear. You've got the practical limits of charging infrastructure, the massive strain it would put on our power grid, not to mention the supply chain issues for things like lithium and cobalt for the batteries. So if they don't go extinct, where do gas cars end up in this new world? Well, it's funny. Their future starts to look a lot like the present for, say, classic cars. They become a niche product, something for hobbyists and enthusiasts, a tool for very specific jobs, or, frankly, a luxury item for the wealthy who don't mind paying a fortune for fuel. And that really brings us to the main takeaway here. In a world with $400 a barrel oil, the fate of the gas car isn't extinction. It's niche-ification, if you will. It stops being this everyday tool for everyone and becomes a specialty item for a select few. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. This exact thing happened to horses when the car came along, and in our scenario, it happens to the gasoline car. So it makes you wonder,
What other technology, something you use every single day without a second thought, is just one big economic shock away from becoming a niche of the past? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.